Hey guys, hey positive readers, it's Positive Writers today with another video. And today is a discussion video, but I'm not in my usual spot because it's not like a sit down serious discussion. This is a discussion that I'm super passionate about a topic that I'm super passionate about. And this discussion's title is Why Young Adult Dystopians Mean So Much to Me. And that's like what it is. It's either that or why I love YA Dystopian so much. It's one of those. They're going to be two different videos, but I'm pretty sure this is the love one because it's going to be very random and just me talking about how much I love the genre and what I love about it and why it'll never die ever. And it hasn't, and I'll show you like that. I'll tell you all about that. And so yeah, I kind of botched my own title, but basically that's what it is. And so today I'm just going to be telling you why I love young adult dystopians, and why I always have. And so I just kind of want to jump in because I'm excited. So if you didn't know, young adult dystopians are these books that are targeted towards young people. The main character is most likely between the ages of like 15, 14 to like 17, 18. And again, it's targeted towards that same age group too. It's the content is typically a little bit more, or supposed to be a little bit above below adult books, but above children's books, and so it's like that sweet spot between like a middle grade and an adult novel. And so like to me, what the young adult genre really represents is like, like it's like stuff is tame. It's a very good story, but it's not like you're not gonna be like kind of upset because it's too violent, or kind of grossed out because it's too much sex or something. Like, it's very tame. It's supposed to be to me. And that's kind of what the young adult genre represents to me, as like the sweet spot where when you're kind of learning about yourself as a teenager, you can go to these books and not only relate to the characters, but also learn things, because most of the time the authors are older and past these ages. And so there's a lot to learn in them. And so I think it's a great genre. I am a big fan of things that reach youth. Things that reach and positively affect youth, because it's so important, and because, again, as a youth reader, somebody who has been reading since I was very young, being able to go to a genre that really caters to you, and then have that genre cater to you in a way that it positively affects you, is super important to me. And that leads me into young adult dystopians. Young adult dystopians are everything I just said, teenage characters, teenage content, things that are going to be appropriate for a teenager to read, and typically maybe might not be as appropriate for a child to read, somebody who is less than, like, maybe, again, 14, 15, and then added on with the dystopian name. And I'm kind of also talking about utopians here, just because a lot of the time a utopia in a book, or something that I've read at least, turns into a dystopian because perfect societies and people don't really mix, because people aren't perfect. And so basically, to me, a dystopian is a society where there is some sort of like problem, like a big problem. Like the government, usually the leaders of this society, have decided something to the point where the citizens are getting bad treatment. Like, whatever it is, I'm being very broad about this because I've read dystopians that differ from these things, and so it's kind of hard to sum up. But to me, again, it's this like government problem, usually, with like the rulers of whatever this place is. It's just like whatever it is, a city, a place, a kingdom, whatever. It is like wrong. Like, they are treating people incorrectly. Somebody's probably being oppressed. There are people that are on the top and people on the bottom. There's most likely gonna be like some type of revolution being planned, or rebellion, because people are being treated badly, and it's kind of just like chaos almost. Like, it reminds me almost of post-apocalyptic stuff, where it's like, the survival thing, but less so, because a lot of the time people really are thriving in these dystopian and utopian worlds, or they're not thriving and they had to survive. But again, it's less I have to survive because humanity is like dying off, and more like this is a well-oiled society. This is a functioning society, but only for certain people, or only if you do a certain thing. And yes, and again, there's like these constrictions, and if you do the wrong thing, you might die, and like there's a lot of terror and a lot of crazy stuff in it. It really combines all the things that I really love about literature in to begin with. Like action-packed stuff, like rules that have to be followed that people are very likely to break, and that should be broken most of the time. you know, again, survival stuff, and, you know, I love stuff like this. And so, mystery also can be a good element in dystopians just because it's a lot of finding out stuff, especially because the citizens are usually under some type of thumb, where they're not getting as much knowledge about the place that they're in as they could. Okay, long description about what the heck a YA dystopian even is, just because I feel like it might be kind of hard. Like, what do you think a YA dystopian is? And so I'm glad that I could, you know, define the genre for me at least, because I, you know, form myself to you. Because when I talk about why I love it because of these things. If something differs from these things in a way that I don't like, then I'm not gonna like that. So it's like, you know, I wanted to talk about the thing that I love about the dystopians and what a dystopian is to me, because it is a lot of different things. Because young adult dystopian and adult dystopian are different, and unbeknownst to me, after I literally started reading, you know, books, and I started reading these young adult dystopians, dystopian has been a genre for a really long time, and thus begins again why I love it, and what the things that I love about it that I've carried over to the young adult genre, because I haven't actually read, I don't think I have read any adult dystopians. I feel like I consumed some stories that were adult dystopians, but I think that I always gravitate, I know I always gravitate towards these young adults. And why is that? Wow. I'm going to tell you right now. And so, it goes along with, again, I think there's a strong thing about it is the fact that these are the first books that I picked up as a young adult. Like, when I was, and it's so funny because I call myself a young adult because of, I mean, this is the story for another time, but I call myself a young adult even though I was 11, 12, when I picked up my first dystopian novel, young adult dystopian novel, which was Insurgent by Veronica Roth. It's behind me. The 10-year anniversary is behind me. It came out 10 years ago this year, so that's insane. But I was not there for that because I was younger. But about 2 years after that, I was there, and I picked it up at my library, and I picked it up, and it's funny, because again, it was the second book in the Divergent series, and so the first YA book I ever read was a sequel. And so that is another reason why I love Dystopia so much, but I'll get to that. So my library, God bless my library because they had it, and God bless my friend who was reading it at the time and was like, yo, you should read this. And she's a Christian, I'm a Christian, and so I was like, she was just telling me, you know, like, there's some stuff in here, like, there's some content in here that, if you want, I can block this out for you, and, you know, if you don't want to read it or whatever, like curse words or whatever, and I was like, no, it's okay. I've never done that, and I probably never will, just because I don't mind. I don't like to read them, because I try not to curse. But this is getting off topic, but not really, because again, this was a time where I was a young adult. Like, I was reading, like, 39 Clues, and then suddenly I picked up Insurgent. And so there's an entire genre jump here. Like, I literally jumped from, like, Dork Diaries, like, Diary of a Woman Kid, to Insurgent, which is, like, this action-packed, crazy, and it's not even the first book, and so you don't even get the introduction of the world. You just kind of get to jump into this book of, like, all this chaos and all this, you know, the government is oppressing people and lying on people, and people are wanted, and people are dying, and, all these guns and people jumping off of trains. Like, oh my god, romance. Like, what is this? You know, as a 12, 11-year-old, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is crazy. But it was crazy good, y'all. Like, I was chilling in my, like, 6th grade classroom, like, eating this book up because, like, I could not put it down. It was, I mean, the best book ever. I still have a big, gigantic place in my heart that will never go away, for Insurgent. The book specifically, and just the Divergent series to begin with, because it is the first dystopian I ever picked up, the first YA I ever picked up, and I just think that I think that it was all God, because if it wasn't for him, I don't know how this even would have happened. I used to be afraid of my parents finding out I had this book, because I was like, this is some adult stuff, like, this is kind of crazy, like, what if somebody finds like I had this and they're like, oh, you're dirty or something. Like, I really was in my feelings about it, but so I like hide the book. But anyway, the point is just that I know I did not do this myself. My library is like, my library was, I don't go to it anymore because I don't live where I was then, but it blessed me so much, because at that time I was reading a lot anyway, and so the fact that they had Insurgent, and the fact that I was like, oh, let me read this, I appreciate it. And so that's a big part of why I love Dystopians, because it was the first like YA thing I ever read, and it was so different from anything I'd ever picked up before. The longest book I had ever read at that time, like, it was 525 pages. I had never read anything longer than, like, 300. Probably, like, 200. Probably, like, about 100, depending on the book. And so, especially, like, with no pictures. And so, it was like, and again, I've always been a reader. And so, to pick up this book that really just gave me, as a reader, who loves stories and who loves actions, and, you know, I had always been watching movies. And so, this book was like a movie, but like a book. And so, to receive this story was, like, next level. Like, and again, there's so much about the genre that I just love, and that is not present in other genres, or wasn't at the time. You know, a teenager being the main character is one of them, and also the caliber of teenager that it is, because again, I was not a teenager at this time. I had some years before I was gonna, well, technically just 1 year, but again, I was not like a teenager, but I also had a grasp on, I guess, what a teenager was, and I also had an understanding of the world at this time, and you know, being in middle school as people, and then seeing this character who is like this girl in this crazy society or whatever, which again, the Divergent starts off like a utopia, which again, this is not, like, I have some of my favorite dystopians back here. I don't own all of them, which is a shame, but I will at some point, hopefully in Jesus' name. But some of these start off like utopias, but Divergent definitely did. And a utopia is literally the opposite of a dystopian, because a dystopian is like a society. A dystopia is a society where things are not ideal. Like, you don't want to live there. Like, there's some stuff going on that is just not cool, and people are trying to like scrape together resources usually, and it's not going well. A utopia is the opposite of that. It's like this ideal, perfect society, and this is what Divergent starts off as. But again, I am reading this book as Insurgent. Like, I'm reading the series as if it starts from the second book, which means that the world has already started to break apart. And so I'm already getting a taste, a very big feast of this dystopian air. And so to jump into this world of Divergent, this dystopian young adult world, while it was crumbling, I don't know. I guess just being the first thing I ever saw was just like it literally went straight to my heart, and I mean, again, it's never left, just because it is really just the most fun I've ever had. Like, I will never forget that experience of reading that book. So that's definitely something that I just adore about YA Dystopians, is the action. Like, the fast-paced stuff that goes on in every book is just like, wow. And seeing Insurgent, which is, again, probably still the best sequel I've ever read in my life, it's so fast-paced, and it's so psychological. The main character is in her point of view, is just going through so much. And the fact that a book could be that expansive, that's in first person, was something that I was just like, yo. And again, it was the first time I ever picked up a young adult book. So I think that's a big reason why. Because again, Divergent as a whole is a very good world, and will probably always be the YA dystopian closest to my heart because of what it represents to me. Because again, what do I love about young adult dystopians? I feel like I haven't even said it yet, because I'm trying to get into the history of why I even read them. But they're all present in Divergent, and again, the action and stuff, but not only the action, but Triss's character, which is this teenage girl who is like, she's like, you know, she's described as being like very pale, not like pale, but like very neutral, very bland almost, and not in a way that was sort of like cliche, like I had seen in maybe like a Wattpad book or something, like, oh, you know, her messy bun, or like, no, it wasn't like she was somehow, bland TM, but she just was somebody who was almost unremarkable in a sense, somebody that you would not really remember if you saw her on the street. She's described as being very skinny and like very small and slight, and people just underestimate her, and you see this in the book. And then to have this series be about her, you know, she is the heroine of the story. You know that she is the protagonist. She is the change that the world needs. You know, in addition to everybody else that, you know, she propels this story on. And the second you jump into this world, even like not even Insurgent but Divergent, you see her making all these decisions that point to her making, you know, taking control of her life. As a teenager, it's something that you don't really think about. Like, you think about all the time, but you can't really grasp it sometimes. It's like really hard to take control of your life, and do what you want with it. And especially, it's really hard, I think it can be hard to change the world. And not even the world, but the world that you are living in. Like, the people that you talk to every day. It can be hard to do something that can cause them to see you in a different light, or to change their ways in regards to something else that affects you. You know, it's just hard. But this series, you know, YA Dystopians make me feel like I could do it. Like, at my age of being just on the cusp of teenagehood, and then throughout my teenagehood watching these movies, and, you know, I will never forget, like, you know, again, the movie franchises are just something else entirely, which I just love so much, because seeing that visually is something else. Like, you know, being able to go to the theater and, you know, all of that, it's just like, oh man, seeing the characters come to life is something very special. But again, I'm talking specifically about the books. It just made me feel like I could do anything. Because this was a time where I was feeling like and again, I wasn't even a teenager yet, but I had a grasp on life, and about how people treated me, based on how I looked, or how like my size or whatever. And it was just like, seeing these characters, seeing her character do that, and then reading other, again, I just started to gravitate towards this genre. I read other books at this time, and continue to read other books now because it expands my capacity as a writer and a reader, and I've enjoyed many stories that are not dystopians. But that is, by far, my favorite genre, and most likely always will be, because of what it represents. Again, it shows this, like, underdog sort of character, this teenager, in a world that's so much bigger than her, doing her thing. And again, I've seen... Some of my favorite dystopians are, actually one of my favorites, I'm pretty sure it's only one, which is unfortunate. No, some of them. They have a guy main character, which was just instrumental, absolutely, for me to see, because something I started to see happening in the dystopian genre is that boys, because women were the ones that are, like, you know, busting in this genre, because women have needed for so long media that represents them in a light that is not derogatory, and that is heroic, and that is something that you want to root for, and is their own person also, because I think a lot of the time female characters can be such, like, cookie cutter, like, you know, and that sucks. And so this genre, first off, was, like, so revolutionary for women as a whole, and for the rest of the world to just see women in a light that was not anything they'd ever seen before, or maybe have thought would have even ever existed. But then for me to see guy characters, because I started to see guy characters fall off the wayside. Like, I started to see, and not in Divergent, I don't, again, my favorite ones, I did not see this. But just because I read so many dystopians at this time, I would just see, especially in my favorite ones, like the action-packed ones with, like, crazy government stuff going on or whatever, you know, my favorite stuff, because, again, there's a way for you to commercialize something and make it less than what it is. And, again, going back to Divergent, the core values at the core of Divergent never are lost in the vibes of the series, because dystopian is a vibe to me. I love being inside of a world where you know something's wrong, and you kind of can't feel it yet, like that utopia to dystopian type of world. I love that. It's probably my favorite, because you don't know something's wrong until it's wrong, and then it's like kind of like, whoa, this other stuff's wrong also, and then you get to, like, uncover this whole mystery that's been under, you know, your nose this whole time, and that's my favorite to read about. And so in these worlds that I was consuming that are not back here, that are not my favorites, I would start to notice the guy characters falling to the wayside and just being sort of these stand-in love interests, you know, these perfect guys. You know, because we forget, again, I'm reading this as a teenager, like, as somebody who was, you know, in this age group, and seeing that and be like, oh my gosh, look at this, you know, female character that's just, like, buzzing, you know what I'm saying? She's like, you know, wow, you know, strong female characters, just, you know, this genre really propelled the entire young adult genre to begin with. And so seeing that is just revolutionary. But then seeing the clear imbalance of guy characters be like these love interests, these perfect, like, hunky, you know, dudes that are just extremely, you know, sexy, and, like, everyone wants them, and they're, like, the ideal guy or whatever, it was just fake to me, and it was just, like, it started to become very annoying, because I was just like, this is ridiculous. Because, again, if we're writing about teenagers for teenagers, you know, you have to think that all teenagers might read this book, like, any teenager could read this book, and it was important to me. The stories that are my favorites are the ones that do not let any character fall away. Like, the ones that truly, like, put layers into their characters and let them all be their own people. Because, again, as a teenager, just wanting to see yourself is such a big part. And I think that does not stop as you get older. And so, in this genre that is literally targeted towards youth, and, again, towards me, who was seeking these things out after reading Insurgent, it was important to me to see male characters be represented in the same light as a female character would be, because, again, it's a new genre to begin with. Again, you don't see stuff that's, like, has teenagers at the helm and they're saving the world and running around and, like, going, you know, the ones with the story and everything. You know, usually teenagers are just teenagers, but seeing them in this light, I think, was such a great opportunity. And, again, obviously, you know, things missed the mark, but I just think that I always will have appreciation for the things that did not miss the mark. The things that truly nipped in the bud, that teenagers have just as much power as anyone else to change not only their lives and their worlds, but the world at large, and to become people and to, you know, realize who they are and things like this in the teenagehood, because, you know, it's not just this kind of cesspool crazy stuff. I think putting a teenager inside of a world that's that crazy and chaotic really is an opportunity for them to truly find themselves a lot faster, I guess, than somebody in our world, because there's so many different things going on. I love the genre because it has such magnetic characters that make such crazy decisions. You know, they have to, because it's survival. And it's, again, these opportunities to grow and to represent. I think the dystopian genre as a whole has an opportunity to represent things that you wouldn't see normally. The government, we know governments can be very corrupt sometimes, but it's hard to see. Sometimes you kind of just forget because it's not something that's televised or that is understood. And again, it's like relative. To you, they might not be corrupt. To them, they might be, and so it's a lot of stuff. But in a world where the main character, because I love dystopians that are in first person about one person, I think it's the best opportunity to show a dystopian world, because this is one person's eyes that you're seeing this through, and it's an opportunity to just see it as a whole. I think it's really fun. But it just teaches me so much about myself, and I really love that. And so I think that it's an opportunity to show what happens and what can happen, and what you can also do when things are just not going right. When you just see something that is not cool, that is not right, whether it's blatant or subtle, and what you can do about that. And I think the genre as a whole, to the grandest degree, shows the type of change that you can be in the world when it feels like things are going wrong. I love dystopians forever, really. And again, saying that they're my favorite genre is an understatement, just because I love them. And which I talked about Divergent so much that it's like in my head. And again, it's my favorite, but there are some that I love, that I love that are not that, and I talk about those. And so, again, there are elements that all of these books that I love that are dystopian that I will make a video about. I will make a video about all my favorite dystopians, so stay tuned. But there are things and elements in these books that all of them share, and then there are some that are different, and I just love the way that they all, in their different ways, can just bring me this story that I find so amazing. I think it is something that it's unadulterated, really, because even seeing it get, I guess, watered down at some point, where you read something and it's kind of like a whole bunch of cliches, or it's a whole bunch of stuff that's like, it's clear that they're just, the true oomph of the genre that, again, I felt when I read Insurgent for the first time. And I think the oomph of the genre comes from these values that are at the core of dystopians, that can be at the core, because again, I have to use examples because it's kind of broad otherwise. And so we're talking about, like, Divergent. This is a society that values people and their traits, and the core traits that really make us a functioning humanity, and then amplifying those things to be the only thing that you are focusing on. And that's where they messed up, because you can't be a full functioning person without all of these traits. This world was very, again, like I said, magnetic. Like, it literally just draws you, because, I mean, we all know what bravery, honesty, being smart, intelligence, kindness, we all know how important these things are, selflessness. But when you blow them out of proportion and focus on one only, and then sort people based on that, it really makes for a very cynical society that is very, very sus, because it's like you can't fully develop as a person because you have the capacity to fall away from and to enhance these other things. And so I think, again, putting a teenager in this world and I think it's a genre that, again, is so focused on youth, and because being a young person is being so impressionable and so, you have so much potential, it's like, it's essential. Really, it's just one of those things that's like, whoever thought of this, like, I don't know. But I love, literally, young adult authors, young adult dystopian authors. I love y'all, because I love us, because I also am an author of dystopian YA. But I really just love the genre as a whole and what it can teach you. And the fact that it's so entertaining while also being so educational. Again, as a teenager, reading, or like as a child, basically, reading Insurgent, and then Allegiant, and then Divergent, and and then going on to read other dystopians like Pawn, by Amy Carter, which I freaking love so much. I have the last book over here. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite dystopians in the world. It's so good. It's a trilogy. Again, trilogies. Even like reading The Darkest Minds, which is one of my favorites. Reading Legend by Marie Lu. Taken by Aaron Bauman. These are amazing dystopians that I love with my whole heart. Matched by Ali Kandi. Great dystopians, y'all. And again, I'm kind of mentioning them all here, but you'll get to hear more about why I love them and what they're about in all my dystopians that I love video. My favorite dystopian video. But to like all of these different things together, it's just like, y'all are delicious. Like, I love the differences and the similarities that come together. It's like, as a child reading them, I was just entertained. Like, I was just having so much fun. Like, I remember reading Insurgent and just being like choking because it was so action packed. There are so many twists and turns, so much is happening. You can't stop from any second. You cannot stop. Like, it's just dragging you around almost, and you just never want to stop being dragged around. In the midst of it is humor and again, being a teenager, which is just kind of weird and awkward and stuff. And so it's like really funny to see that in a world where, yeah, you're gonna die if you don't do this and this and this. It's so interesting to see it. It's so interesting to see it. And again, it was so fun at the time. And it's still fun now. But now it's fun with the added values that I can see are clearly at play in this world. One of the biggest values being hope, because in our world, it's kind of hard sometimes to even see that it is kind of hopeless. The way that people live and the way that things are, given to us, and the way that you're kind of always running sort of a rat race trying to catch up to other people and comparing yourself and never being satisfied and focusing only on yourself and things like this, that's very hopeless. That's a very hopeless way of life. But as someone who has always strived for, even in my worst moments, hope and positivity, it's so funny that my favorite genre would be dystopian because, again, it seems like, and I've heard people say that it's a very bleak genre, but to me it's very hopeful. If you do it right, it's very hopeful because it's, in the darkest places, that's where the light's going to be the strongest. And so these dystopians, to me, dystopian genre as a whole, again, especially young adult dystopian, because when you're talking about, like, kids, it's like there's so much hope there anyway, because there's so much future that is potentially there, and so seeing that is so hopeful for me. And as a kid, again, I'm reading this, I'm having so much fun, but the hope is always there. Like, I'm keeping reading because I hope that these characters are going to make it out. I hope that some change is going to come about, and they keep that hope enforced. It's not bleak to me. It's never bleak to me. Even something as dark as like a Hunger Games, which is like straight up just some kids dying and having to die for the whole country to see. It's so hopeful because it lets you see humanity in its rawest form. How do people act when people are literally getting killed in the street? I don't know. That is when you kind of find out who you are, really. And again, because a lot of people in real life have not experienced this, to have a genre that goes there is so important to me and something that I will always cherish and that I love being in and getting into. And so hope is like probably the biggest thing about the dystopian genre that I love. Because again, anything can be entertaining, but something that really just holds up that hope and also has no problem and does not shy away from the darkness that the world has, and that can lead the darkness that can lead us to do things that are just horrible and that hurt other people. Finding that hope there, especially as a child who is growing up, period, is just like so important. Because as a person, it's easy for me to feel hopeless in the world, even though I have hope and I have the Lord and I have God and I have people around me that also believe in God and that also remind me that the world is hopeful no matter what it's looking like. I still find it easy to lead into that hopeless feeling of like, dang, people just suck and people are just always hating each other and people are always making these wrong choices and blah, 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 blah. But, again, this genre is that representation for me that no matter how bad it ever gets, there's always going to be hope. There's always going to be kindness. There's always going to be people who are going to be good and just act right and, be selfless. And, again, that's one of the reasons why I think that, again, God literally handed me that version on a silver platter because it blatantly takes out these things that are like essentially fruits of the spirit almost, like again these selflessness and like kindness and honesty and selflessness, honesty, kindness, intelligence, and there is a fifth one. Obviously bravery, dauntless, my faction. But to take these big traits out that every person has the capacity to exhibit and sorting people based on the one that they exhibit the most, in these like simulated situations, it's like it controls everything that people are, and it takes away so much of what being a person really is, which is this multifaceted layered thing. And so seeing that series first is what really, it's what imprinted Dystopians on my heart forever, and it is the reason why I love it forever, because as a person, again, you do strive to have all of these things in abundance and to practice these things in a way that is fulfilling to your life and the people around you. And seeing that go wrong and seeing the way that people misuse these things and go overboard and, that series is so good. Y'all, if y'all haven't read that version yet, please go read it. Some of those quotes in there, like even from the movies, are just so good. And that's what it is, really. It's the opportunity. Young adult dystopians are an opportunity to showcase almost the underdogs of society, teenagers, seen as the lowest of the low, worst people ever, most annoying, taking this demographic and these people and putting them in a world where literally the adults don't even know what they're doing, and saying that you can make a change. You know, it's that thing that shows you can do it. You know, there is something that you can do about this. And you can always hope, and you can always have hope and faith that things are going to get better. You can be that change and that hope for somebody else. Oh, you know what I'm saying? It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's like a step up from post-apocalyptic media, which I don't hate. I definitely enjoy some post-apocalyptic stuff. My least favorite thing about it is the fact it's a lack of other people. It's just like, it's so secluded almost all the time. And I love that dystopians are most often this big society that's dealing with this stuff together. And so when the main character decides to step out and do something different, it's a ripple effect to all the other people. You know, and it's so amazing to see what people do when given the chance to change. And so, and seeing that change also represented in a person that makes that decision. And so, it reminds me that you can be that person to make that choice to change. And gosh, I mean, I wanted this to be a video where I was talking very passionately about something that I love, and it ended up being that. I feel like I somehow messed up. Or like I feel like this should have been like more fanny, like more geeky, like more I love this genre. But you know, we have time for that when I start talking about like my series of like the ones that I love and what it means to me and stuff like that. But I wanted to talk about why I really just love the genre. Why it's my favorite. And that is why my favorite. Like really, it's very deep for me. It's not just like something that's very entertaining or something that was cool for a second and then people don't buy it or make it anymore. Because again, everything becomes so commercial. I start to just not like anything because like y'all just watering it down so people can buy it, and people are just, you know, a lot of people just don't care. And so I care, again, especially as a creator of YA Dystopians and just a writer in general, the substance that's in the dystopian genre, and that is still there. I do want to offer some hopes to you if you're like, dang, I kind of miss YA Dystopian after watching this video. I went on Amazon because my book, Ichikan, that I've been talking about for a couple weeks now, is a fantasy dystopian, or dystopian fantasy, whichever one you call it. It is a dystopian with fantasy elements, or you can see it as a dystopian, as a fantasy with dystopian elements. I think it's the other way around, because it is not a fantasy world. It is a very much world that is kind of similar to ours with fantasy elements. And so, but the dystopian aspect is the biggest thing about it to me. And and I was writing it around this time where all these were coming out or whatever, and why I was truly enjoying all these great stories. And it has it has those things. It has that substance, and which is why I keep turning back to it. Obviously, it's my book, but still, you know. And I was looking on Amazon, and I was looking at the rankings, and it's in children's. And it's funny, I'm talking about young adult, but again, I still consider children to be young adult because again, obviously, know your age, know what you can do. But again, I was a child when I consumed Insurgent, and I wouldn't change it for the world because I needed that. As a writer, as a person, as a creator, you know, I needed that. And so I'm glad. And so I'm not going to limit my book, especially because my book is a lot more tame than Divergent is. It really is it really can be read by a child and a teenager, and they both can enjoy it and it won't be inappropriate. So just so you know, if you're looking for some fiction that is not too grown up, because it really does speak to that young adult stuff I was talking about before, of being tame and being appropriate for the age group, while also having the characters that are that age. And so, you know, if you are looking for a young adult dystopian that is that has the elements that I've been talking about this whole time, the substance and all of that, and the characters and the fast-pacedness, read Ichikan by Ben Wasserkoff. It's me. You know, I wrote it. And so, I was on Amazon, and I was looking at the rankings, and I clicked on Children's Dystopian because my book ranks in dystopian because I put that under there. You know, children, young adult dystopian or whatever. And I clicked on it, and they have new releases on there. And I'm like, yo. And I click, and there are releases, you know, anywhere from like 2020 to like now, series that are continuing, that people are loving in this young adult children's dystopian genre. And I'm like, I thought this was over, you know? And I get sad every time I think about it, like, oh my gosh, the dystopian era is over, or whatever. But really what happened is, and again, I believe that this is the Lord, obviously, like I believe all good things are from him, that it needed to die. Like, the world had to take its hands off of dystopian for it to truly flourish into the genre that it is now and will continue to be. To go back to its roots, because when Suzanne Collins wrote The Hunger Games, when you know, Divergent was written by Veronica Roth, they had the grasp of the stories they wanted to tell and the things that drove the genre for them, and they put those things into those books, not knowing it was going to then skyrocket to these other stories, into this big boom in genres and really just kind of build the genre to begin with. They didn't know that. They didn't know it was going to happen. And so the stories are so intact. You know, you can take them out of that time period, and they're timeless and beautiful and amazing because they are, again, the heads. You know, they are the blueprint. You know, and I enjoy dystopians that were written far after that, and you know, just because I love a dystopian genre as a whole, and people do it right. And so after they wrote these books, and then people are like talking about movies, and more people are writing YA dystopians, and it's becoming a good seller across, you know, worldwide, you know, platforms and everything. Um, it just sort of lost its meaning. Like people, not obviously not everybody, but again, I just think that once something becomes commercial, it's like it loses its meaning. People are just trying to sell. People are just trying to get something out to an audience that people enjoy, and like, okay, next thing. You know, it's like it loses the thing that made it I'll say magnetic again. In the first place, you know, the thing that really held it down, the substance that was there, is taken away because it's mainstream. And so it's so funny that after, you know, after like the Divergent series really ended, I still am hoping for an Ascendant movie, or the last Allegiant installment. But anyway, which is like 2016, which is about 2 years after the first movie came out, and obviously after the Hunger Games and everything. I think that it kind of just was like, okay, like I watched the Fifth Wave movie, which was great, and I wish they had made more. I watched the Darkest Mind movie, wish they had made more, you know? And I'm not even sure how many other dystopians are being made into movies or whatever right now, but I just think it needed to happen. I think, and again, it makes me really sad because I was alive at that time. I was, you know, a crusader of the genre. Still am. And even of the hidden gems that people don't even talk about because they had the substance and not the entertainment value or whatever. But I think it needed to happen because, again, going on Amazon today and seeing those new releases and seeing people loving the stuff in this genre so much. And again, I'm not like gonna read everything on there. And I'm sure I will read some of them. I'm sure that they'll call to me in the way that they're supposed to, in the way that I love dystopians to do. But I just think that it needed to return back to its people. You know, I think that dystopian is such a niche genre because it can teach you so much about the world and about yourself, and it can cause you to grow so much that it does not need to be commercialized. Like, obviously, great sales. Sales are amazing. Movie deals are amazing. I still look forward to seeing much more young adult dystopian stuff. But I want it to be by the people who not only know what's going to sell, but really have a heart for the story. You know, have the passion for what dystopian means, what the genre means, what the stories that they're trying to tell mean, and who they're giving the stories to, you know, and the quality of that and everything. And I really want that to be at the helm. And I think, again, it needed to happen. And so, you know, I have a lot of hope for the genre. I look forward to continuing to go on Amazon and, you know, find, you know, all these like the new releases and the authors that are staying true to this genre and doing things in it that drew me to it in the first place. And I look forward to putting out more dystopian books, dystopian YA books for y'all. And again, if you haven't read it, you can on my YA dystopian fantasy book. Please read it. It is 99 cents on Kindle, and the paperback's coming out soon. So. Ooh. And so anyway, yeah, I just wanted to come on here and just talk about a genre that I love very much. It took a long time. I didn't think it was going to take this long, but when you love something, you kind of just ramble on and on. But I hope it makes some sense. I hope you felt this, you know, I hope you felt this. I'm excited to edit this and get my thoughts out in a much more coherent way because I kind of just felt like I was rambling. But I trust myself that I said what I needed to say. And I'm out. No, I love you all, and I will see you later with another video. Look out for that. Why the dystopian genre means so much to me. I think it's the video that I was thinking I was making this time, but it wasn't. And also my favorite dystopians. Look out for that. I'm excited. What are y'all favorite young adult dystopians? You know what I'm saying? Does the genre still mean something to you? Like, is that something that you like still are excited about? Like, just like I am. I just want to hear your comments in the comments. But I love you all, and I'll see you all later with another video. Stay hopeful. Be brave. Peace out.